You think you're tired, but you're not. What you're feeling isn't exhaustion from working too hard. It's withdrawal from constant stimulation. Because real burnout doesn't look like scrolling for hours when you should be resting. It doesn't look like checking your phone every 5 minutes for no reason. And it definitely doesn't look like needing constant noise just to feel normal. That's not burnout from overwork. That's addiction to stimulation. And the worst part about this kind of addiction, it doesn't feel like addiction at all. It feels like this is just who you are now. Like you've always been this distracted, this unfocused, this unable to sit still. But you haven't always been this way. You were trained into this state gradually. Every time you wake up and reach for your phone before you're fully conscious, you're not choosing to do that. You're obeying something that's been programmed into you. A loop that's been trained into your nervous system through repetition. Notification arrives, you check it, you scroll, you get a small reward, you repeat. Not because you're weak or lack discipline, but because your brain has been conditioned to expect stimulation at all times. Silence now feels uncomfortable instead of peaceful. Stillness feels like something is wrong instead of restful. And the moment nothing is happening around you, you panic slightly. So you fill the void immediately without thinking. Scroll through something, refresh your feed, switch apps, play something in the background. Anything at all. Just to avoid being alone with your own mind for even a moment. And then you call it burnout when you can't focus on real work. You say you have no energy for important tasks, no focus for sustained effort, no discipline to do what needs doing. But look closely at what you actually do have energy for. You have energy for distractions that stimulate you constantly. You have focus for things that give you instant reward without effort. You have discipline for maintaining your social media habits perfectly, just not for things that don't stimulate you immediately with dopamine hits. This is where most people lie to themselves completely. They think they're overwhelmed by too much responsibility. But in reality, they're overstimulated by too much meaningless input. Their baseline for what feels normal is completely broken. Normal life feels boring now. Not because normal life changed or became less interesting, but because your brain has been trained to expect intensity constantly. So when real work shows up, work that's slow, repetitive, uncomfortable, requiring sustained attention, you can't stay with it. Not because you're incapable of doing the work, but because it doesn't hit your dopamine receptors immediately. No instant reward, no immediate feedback, no quick stimulation. So your brain rejects it automatically as uninteresting. And this is how you lose control of your life without realizing it's happening. Not through dramatic failure or obvious collapse, but through preference, through tiny choices repeated constantly. You start choosing what feels good in the moment over what actually matters long term, again and again and again without noticing the pattern, until your entire life is built around avoiding discomfort of any kind. Every moment of potential boredom filled with distraction, every quiet space filled with noise, every possibility of sitting with yourself filled with consuming something. And you wonder why you can't accomplish anything meaningful anymore, why you can't focus for more than a few minutes, why everything feels harder than it used to. The answer is simple but uncomfortable. You've trained your brain to reject anything that doesn't provide immediate stimulation, and meaningful work rarely provides that. Meaningful work is usually slow, repetitive, frustrating, boring for long stretches. It requires sustained attention over time without constant reward. It demands you sit with discomfort and uncertainty without distraction. But your brain can't do that anymore because it expects stimulation every few seconds. So it rebels against meaningful work by creating restlessness, anxiety, urgent need to check something. And you interpret that rebellion as lack of energy or burnout. But it's not. It's withdrawal from your dopamine addiction. Your brain is literally experiencing withdrawal symptoms when you try to focus without distraction. The restlessness, the anxiety, the desperate need to check your phone, those are withdrawal symptoms. Not signs that you need rest. Signs that you need to break the addiction. Here's the shift nobody tells you about recovery. You don't need more motivation to do meaningful work. You need less stimulation, polluting your baseline constantly. Because the more you consume meaningless stimulation, the less you can create anything meaningful. The more you chase quick dopamine rewards, the weaker your ability to focus becomes. And the weaker your focus becomes, the harder it is to do anything that requires sustained attention. It's a vicious cycle that gets worse over time. Each day of constant stimulation makes the next day's focus harder. Each week of dopamine addiction makes meaningful work feel more impossible. Each month of avoiding discomfort makes sitting with difficulty more unbearable. Until you reach a point where you physically cannot focus for more than minutes at a time. Where reading a book feels impossible. Where having a conversation without checking your phone is anxiety-inducing. Where sitting in silence is genuinely intolerable. That's not your natural state. That's the end stage of dopamine addiction. So the solution isn't to push harder or find better motivation. It's to remove the source of addiction systematically. Remove the noise that's constantly filling your environment. Remove the constant input streaming into your consciousness all day. Remove the addiction to feeling something stimulating every single second. Start with small removals that feel manageable. Put your phone in another room for an hour. Sit without any input, no music, no podcast, no video, just silence. Do one task without switching to anything else until it's complete. These feel impossible at first because you're in withdrawal. Your brain will scream at you that something is wrong, that you need to check something urgently, that this silence is unbearable and you need stimulation immediately. But those screams are just withdrawal symptoms, not actual emergencies. And if you can sit through them without giving in, something shifts. The desperation fades gradually. The need for constant stimulation decreases slowly. Your ability to focus on one thing returns incrementally. Because the moment you can sit in silence without reaching for distraction, that's the moment you take your mind back. That's when you realize the restlessness wasn't real. It was trained. The need for constant noise wasn't natural. It was conditioned. The inability to focus wasn't permanent. It was the result of addiction. And addictions can be broken if you're willing to endure withdrawal. Most people will never do this difficult work because it feels like losing something valuable. It feels like making life more boring and less interesting. It feels like disconnecting from everything happening in the world. But what you're actually losing is dependence on external stimulation, and what you're gaining is internal capacity for sustained attention, the ability to do deep work that matters, the ability to sit with difficulty without fleeing, the ability to create instead of just consuming. And the moment you're no longer dependent on constant stimulation, you become dangerous in the best way, focused when everyone else is distracted, patient when everyone else needs instant results, capable of sustained effort when everyone else can only manage bursts, unpredictable because you're not following the same dopamine loops as everyone else, in control of your attention instead of being controlled by algorithms designed to capture it. That's real power in a world where almost everyone has outsourced their attention to feeds and notifications. The ability to decide what you focus on instead of being pulled constantly by stimulation. The ability to work on hard things for hours without needing entertainment breaks. The ability to sit with your own thoughts without panic or desperate need for input. Most people have completely lost these abilities without realizing they're gone. They think everyone is this distracted now. They think constant phone checking is just normal modern behavior. They think inability to read books or have long conversations is just how life is now. But it's not normal. It's the result of systematic conditioning toward dopamine addiction. And you can break that conditioning if you're willing to be uncomfortable. If you're willing to sit through withdrawal without medicating it with more stimulation. If you're willing to be bored for long enough that boredom stops feeling unbearable. Because boredom is just the space where creativity happens. Where deep thinking occurs, where you actually process your experiences instead of just consuming more. But you never get to that space if you fill every moment with distraction. You just stay in constant consumption mode, always taking in but never processing. Always stimulated but never satisfied. Always busy but never productive. Always tired but never actually resting, because rest requires unstimulated downtime. You were never burnt out from working too hard. You were overstimulated from consuming too much meaningless content. Your brain is exhausted from constant dopamine hits, not from sustained effort toward meaningful goals. And now you know the difference. Now you can see the mechanism that's been controlling you. Now you can choose to break the addiction instead of managing the symptoms. It won't be comfortable at first. Withdrawal never is. But the person on the other side of withdrawal is someone you'll barely recognize. Someone who can focus for hours without distraction. Someone who creates instead of just consuming. Someone who controls their attention instead of having it stolen constantly. Someone dangerous because they're not operating on the same dopamine loops as everyone else. Try sitting in silence for 10 minutes with no phone, no music, no input at all. Just you and your thoughts. And watch what your mind does when you deny it the stimulation it's been trained to expect. That's where the work begins.